if we're talking about women of color, right? How then do we unpack the fact that there's a certain template that you follow to sell, like units as an artist, and there's only certain forms, I think, that are accepted in the mainstream of what people would say is sexual liberation.
Right.
Some people would argue that the WAP video doesn't look any different than a video that a male rapper would put out, right? Some people might argue that it's different because I don't even know if there were any men in that video.
No.
No.
And so it's not about the male gaze in the video. However, some people would still argue that it is directed towards the male gaze. So, but you said that people politicize the song, right? But do you think that the song in and of itself, the video in and of itself, was a political act and move based on the decision by the artist?
I think it is because Megan Thee Stallion is very much about empowering women, young women, to do whatever they want to do, like Hot Girl Summer, all that. Like, she started those trends for women, and guys, like, they just don't like it. And I don't understand why they don't like it, because if you talk to most men, they like promiscuous women who do these things with them, and like
as long
do
as they
these
can
things.
control it. I think it's the idea of controlling.
Yeah,
like,
it's the fact that they
quote-unquote,
can't control
female
it. So they
form.
like,
But-
once it goes out of their control, they just, they have a problem with it.
But I think, again, to like Sean, I think that's a reach to say like it was purposely like a political move. Maybe I'm not in that circles, or I'm just like not giving them enough credit. But just like, again, I don't know if Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion sat down and were like, let's make or create some like social political statement and like drop the song.
Right.
I think you think like it was like intentionally put out.
No,
to, like,
I feel you. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I think it was just like a song that they knew would be like hot on the charts, and it just happened to cause traction with like that other stuff.
I think the thing with it, like Cardi B's talked about this herself. Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi B are capitalists. They trying to make money.
Yeah.
Sex sells, point blank, period. Now people like writing all their think pieces and
Oh, God.
putting all this meaning to everything, and we got to have all these debates. But sometimes people are just trying to make their money. Whatever
Yeah.
you decide to make of it, that's on you. They still making their money. They're breaking records, and that's great. I can celebrate that. But I don't feel like it was this super intentional, ode to feminism as folks are.
Oh God.
Making it out to be. While as a feminist, I support their ability to do
Yeah.
that and whatever else that they want. But I don't think it was an intentional
You're not gonna
sociopolitical
co-sign it as a part of
message.
like the feminist movement or something like that, like
Well,
active feminism or.
Well, part of feminism
Yeah.
is creating space for that to be okay.
Okay.
But I don't think that was their intention.
Got you.
Like
Yeah.
I'm torn, right? So I'm torn, like in the sense that like I identify as a heterosexual male. So when I see the video, right, like you dealing with what you see like in the video, right? Like you see two attractive women of color. It's like, okay, that's great. And then I'm stuck with, okay, why am I feeling like I shouldn't enjoy this, right? Am I perpetuating capitalist patriarchy by taking some enjoyment in this? Or do I just enjoy it like anything else and say, hey, this is what they put out, this is what they wanted, I'm just gonna enjoy it and turn all of those other things off?
Do you think it's possible to hold space for both to be true?
Yeah, and that's the part where I'm tearing, right? Because when people talk about like the empowerment piece, I think about, and like people might say, yo, Don, you're a respectable Negro right now when you say this, right? Because people talk about like, you want people to be able to decide and do what they want. I agree with that. But as a father of daughters, like I would be lying if I said that I'm gonna go home. I mean, my youngest daughter is 14, so I'm not gonna be like, hey, are you finished with your homework? Let's watch WAP, right? I'm probably not gonna do that, or I'm probably not gonna say this is what I want you to be. And I understand that that's coming from a place of judgment, but I would be dishonest if I didn't say that I was dealing with that turmoil, right? Like this whole idea of freedom and agency and, liberation, and then also thinking about my daughters, like I don't want that for her. But I mean, if that's what she were to choose to do, I mean, I have to be okay with it. But it's not the top of my list. Where someone's like, what do you hope for your daughter?
I hope she makes the next
If I'm being
video.
honest,
Yeah.
it's not that. And I know that it's coming from a place of judgment, and that's something I have to deal with. That's on me.
I think that's something important to think about though, right? Because so I have a daughter as well. She's almost 3. She'll be 3 in December. And so I was like thinking about like how would I even talk about sexual liberation with her? And I don't see it as like having one conversation. I think it's like practice, right? You know, what she sees me do, you know, how I frame things, you know, how I perpetuate rape culture or not. But I think, you know, the thing that I want her to understand is that sexual liberation does not have to be tied into this idea that is created or and rooted in, you know, cis hetero patriarchy. It doesn't have to be reclaiming the very same images that harm us. It could look like something else. And I feel like sometimes in these spaces when these conversations are had, it's like, well, if you, especially as a woman, if you don't support Cardi B or Meg Thee Stallion, right, you're not a feminist, you're not this. And it's just like, this is not what sexual liberation looks like for me or feels like for me. And when I think about, you know, articulating that to my daughter, it will likely look like something different, something that's actually rooted in liberation. Like, we can't keep reclaiming everything, and just because we say we're reclaiming it, now it's empowerment. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
That's fair. I think even breaking it down for myself from like my place of like male privilege, just watching the video or even having those, or let's not say having those discussions, but like watching those discussions take place and like understanding people talk about like, you know, sexual liberation of like the female form. Like, it was definitely a concept at first that kind of went over my head because I was just like I guess I get it. Like,
Right.
but it didn't really strike a chord with me about like why two women being able to like be on a platform and like showcasing their bodies in such a way would be like so liberating for so many so many women. And then like I kind of like broke it down a little bit, like had conversations with some of my other like friends, and they were telling me like, yeah, no, like this is you know, from our perspective, we're living in a society where like the female form is always frowned upon, always critiqued, always like kind of forced into like this box where like, you know, allowing these women to like sexually express themselves and be explicit is something that's not casually or like normally done or like normalized. And I was like, I get that, but like, I don't know if it's because I feel like I'm also torn because I do think we need to normalize certain like behaviors and not make them so like taboo, but at the same time, I think I get caught up on like this whole argument sometimes of this feminist movement stuff, and again, that just might be me being not as open-minded as I could be, but it just, I don't know, it just always feels like it's a reach.
Like the reach with saying that video is an example or the example of sexual
or maybe because
liberation.
like you said, like to me, and I don't know if I can even say this, like maybe like from like a place of like being an ally, like you talk about like sexual liberation, and I'm coming in like with my scope of like manhood or like heterosexual like normative likeness, like my imagination of what it like looks like is probably like way different than what somebody who like lives in that reality imagines as well. So just having to break that down and understand that for myself is something I'm trying to continue to like to do.
So then when you were talking about it's just a song, right, that they put out, what do you say that the folks are like, well, it's not just a song, or who judge it, or who say, oh, this is liberation, like?
Well, I really relate to what you said, right? Like, my dad's like you. He doesn't want that for me. But I think, like, you have to instill morals in your children. So, like, that's what he did to me. I think what they did is perfectly fine, but I personally would not go, and my sexual liberation doesn't look like theirs. You know, I think it's, like, a person-by-person case. We all have different morals, so I think it's just really up to you as a person to decide, is this me or is this not me? But I don't think we should sit here and say that what they did is not okay.
Mm-hmm.